last chapter. And I think maybe could somebody just read just one verse, Matthew 7, verse 6.
Race to see his face.
Do not give what is full to darkness, and do not throw your pearls before swine they will trample under foot and turn and maul you.
Okay, just jumped right in there.
There you go, good job. So, don't give what is holy to dogs, and do not throw your pearls before swine. She goes into quite a bit about dogs, and I mean, what that means, I mean, but what is that, what do you think it means? Does it mean, is there a time and place for sharing the good news? Because I mean, we're supposed to share the good news. And it isn't always just to church people.
Right. I think there are people I've met that it's, I mean, not that you can't share it, but if they're closed off to it, you don't need to contaminate it. You know, and just like later she talks about how, you know, you have to just kind of live out your actions and not just hammer people over the head with stuff. So I mean, not that you don't share it, but if they're just like literally not receptive, it's like, okay, you can just back off because you've planted that little seed and that's our job.
Well,
Move on.
and also live by example
Mhm.
and live for them. Sometimes that's a better way of.
I've never gotten it.
Going through counseling sometimes, I remember the counselor will say, in an argument, it's always good to say to the person before, you know, you want to tell them what your side of the story is now a good time for you to listen? You know, because, you know, you want to tell them your point of view, but, you know, you need to make sure that they're ready to listen. Because no, maybe now is not a good time. Now, they might be right involved in doing something else, and they don't want to stop what they're doing to listen to your argument or whatever it is you want to present to them. And so that was always hard, but it was a good lesson to learn to say, is now a good time? No, okay, when is a good time? You know, okay, let's set up aside a time, you know, when we can sit and so. I watched a video on the Sermon on the Mount, actually, that Matt suggested, and it showed, it was a cartoon video, but it showed these people, here the person that was the religious person could see people over there gambling and swearing and doing all sorts of stuff, and he wanted to tell them what was right. You know, but so he did, and they just pushed him away, you know. And then later in the video, he went and talked one-on-one to one of the persons that was in there, and the person was more open to it, you know.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if that's because do not throw your pearls before swine or give what is holy to dogs. I think we are supposed to always preach to people or give them the good news and stuff like that, but it's gotta wait for when it's a good time for them to listen, I think.
My Bible has a little note at the bottom that kind of turns it in a direction that I hadn't thought of before. It talks about what it means is to not force people who are not Christian or willing to become Christian or whatever into upholding the same like requirements that God has for our lives. So like the things that God requires us to do as Christians in our character and the things that make for the kingdom aren't necessarily something to be forced on people outside of the faith. And so that was I never thought about that. That's what it says.
Yeah, and she goes into that later about how a lot of what Jesus is talking about is for the community, not necessarily for the outsiders. Like you can't judge outsiders on the same thing as the community or whatever kind of stuff. And so I think that's the same kind of thing too. It's like for this.
Yeah, I mean, do not judge, I mean. because I work with a lot of the homeless people, it's like, don't they know better? No, they probably don't. They've
Yeah.
never been taught,
Yeah.
and it's just like, why don't they know that that's inappropriate? They weren't taught that that's inappropriate, and it's just like, oh. And so just to assume that they think, um. I was at a funeral here yesterday for, Susan's son, and a lot of tacky people came. And, they were swearing and using the F word here and there all the time, and I thought, it's inappropriate in church. Nope, they don't. It's part of their actual usual talk.
Mhm.
They weren't trying to be bad, disrespectful.
Mm-mm.
It's just the way they talk, and it's like,
Yeah.
and so it's not, we're not supposed to judge, the previous one talked about log in your own eye. So. Yeah, I like it that your Bible says that.
And one thing she meant.
Did that before?
No, it's the internet died, so I had to
Yeah,
go to the guest network.
It was, and then it wasn't.
Okay,
We're fine, just keep going.
just keep going.
Ignore me,
You do not see the man behind.
ignore me.
So again, I guess, asking people, I mean, if you want to preach to them in their morning. Now might not be a good time to be preaching them, but you should be happy, Um. What other human relationships do you think we should be asking people?
Oh, just on a note of that, like, I've been on the receiving end of that as well. So I've had people kind of accost me about things from a religious standpoint in a place where there wasn't an alert that would be the purpose of the conversation. And so, first of all, that puts me on edge just because I feel like I'm scrambling a little bit. But it was also a situation where the person was a man and I am a woman, and I know in that context, that person doesn't understand the dynamic within parts of the church that brings up. And so it, needless to say, was not a productive conversation, because I shut it down, because I was just like, I'm not. This makes me uncomfortable in so many places, it's not even funny, and it's like, take the time to think about how to approach that conversation. And you have to give people the out, if they don't wanna have the conversation. Like, they don't have to have the conversation, right?
Right, yeah,
Mhm.
right, so I think that's more, again, we're kind of bouncing back and forth between asking and, the pearls before the swine. I don't know necessarily think that the people are swine, but it's just the idea that they're not receptive to accept it,
You really don't think people are swine?
No, I don't. I really don't. I don't. I'm one of those people that think everybody has goodness in them. This needs to come out. Yeah.
I think people are swine.
Yeah, okay. So does somebody want to read the ask, seek, and knock, which is Matthew, 7 through 12?
I can read it.
Okay.
Ask and it will be given to you. Search and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened for you. For everyone who asks receives, and everyone who searches finds. And for everyone who knocks, the door will be opened. Is there anyone among you who, if your child asked for bread, would give a stone? Or if the child asked for a fish, would give a snake? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? In everything, do to others as you would have them do to you, for this is the law and the prophets.
Okay, so. Is anyone else thinking of that song? Ask. Everything's a song. So, So how are we supposed to, do you think that this means God, or are we talking about God here? Are we asking about God, is that who we're asking?
Well, partly she's talking about, or the verse is talking about, you know, if you go to somebody's house or somebody and ask for help,
Mhm.
so not just to God, I
Yeah.
think it's to your friends. It's more like to community in this situation, isn't it? Because
Mhm.
this is the one where. Well, in one of them, a guy's going to knock because he needs bread because he has company and.
Oh, yeah.
Gets the guy up, you know, well, that somebody knows. So I think it could be either,
Mhm.
but I think that verse is sometimes misused in the sense that, you know, people tell you, well. You didn't get better or something, it's because you didn't ask, or you didn't, something good, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
well, there's something wrong because you should have prayed and it would all be all right.
Yeah,
Ask and it shall be given unto you. That's not what that says.
Yeah.
mhm,
So does that mean when you ask to be healed and you're not healed?
yeah,
Or people tell you should go boldly, you know, and ask for this or that, you know.
yeah.
Yeah. So how do we reconcile that to that verse?
Well, yeah, it's hard. It's interesting because she delves into the much more practical, like actual thing, like if your child is actually asking for food, you know, and being fed. I think that it's hard to know because I like how she says we have here another really Jesus moment. Because indeed, even in the gospel, not all doors open. Um, yeah.
Or you think about the starving kids and
Yeah.
families in Gaza,
Mm-hmm.
you pray and you ask that they be fed and get what they need. You know, I mean, if you look at it in that context.
Yeah.
It
I mean,
Makes you wonder.
it's,
I think we also have to remember Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus asked that this cup would be taken from him,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't.
but then he says, but not my will, but yours, you know.
Yeah, that's always the case.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
We can ask. Yeah.
it's. Yeah, and I think that is the religious answer. It's God's will, you know, if you're not healed, then it was God's will that you're not healed, but that's still hard to process, you know,
I understand.
What?
I understand that,
yeah.
but it's hard to process.
I'm not sure that that's the religious answer. But it's an answer.
It's an answer, yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, a quote unquote religious answer.
mhm. It's, yeah, I mean, because lots of prayers are asked for, you know, and, you know, I hear, well. Maybe it, like you said, you didn't ask properly, or your heart wasn't right, but, I mean, yeah, well, maybe my heart was right, maybe I do pray for these starving children in Gaza. Or somebody's. Pain to be relieved and, you know, not always disease to be healed, because I kind of at peace with that one, being a nurse is like, well. But at least maybe their pain can be relieved.
Or that God can be with them.
Yeah, so, you know,
I think it's hard too, because. Like, I never want to invalidate people's experience and their pain and I mean, cause it's valid. It's hard because sometimes I think, and I think we've all experienced this, you get in a situation that doesn't go the way you want it to, or is very challenging. But I think sometimes I've gotten things out of that situation. Now, it doesn't justify the thing that happens, right? So like, because that's where sometimes I think the church does the wrong thing and says, well, your pain was given to you so that you could learn this or whatever, right? And that's terrible. But at the same time, I think I've gotten things of value out of really difficult situations sometimes, and I don't know if I would have said. I'm happy that I had to deal with that, but I feel like there was also something I took away from it, so I don't really know how to articulate that, but.
I know exactly what you mean.
But so you like I said, you don't want to excuse one or the other, but just leave space for both to be there, I guess.
Mhm.
I don't like the find a silver lining in everything, because sometimes there's not a silver lining, but sometimes there is, and I don't know.
Mhm.
I wonder if like, I just felt like a sermon coming on here, but, you know, the idea.
Spontaneous sermon, duck.
Well, ask and you shall receive or whatever. The idea that maybe even the wrong people are asking. Right? Like, so, or, in other words, not the wrong people are asking, but other people, like, how, if you mentioned Gaza and, people, children particularly starving in Gaza, and it's like, so, maybe a family might be calling out to God, and they're knocking and is the door getting open or whatever it might be. But it's like, okay, but how different would it be if like Benjamin Netanyahu was praying that prayer, God feed the children, that are starving in Gaza. I mean, I have a feeling that prayer coupled with his abilities, and stuff, the power that he has, could make a different outcome,
Interesting,
you know?
because, well, the Israelis wanted to get rid of Netanyahu at the beginning of this. And he said this war will help save his term as the prime minister, and I just wonder if that's a good subject, and maybe his hard line is causing this.
I mean, well, or, I mean, well, not to isolate it to one, to that circumstance, but, we think of other things that happen in our society and stuff that, with, say it's poverty, maybe the wrong people are asking, are praying for, for those who are in need. Maybe it's, people have the power to be able to do something.
And that's like today, you use the phrase soften, praying to soften the hearts of some of the leaders that are doing cruel things.
Oh, I'm
You know,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So what I don't
Well-
understand is USAID, we used to send food to everybody, the current administration has shut it off. Why? Why on earth?
Save
We
money.
used to ship food everywhere to the world,
The
that
cruelty
agency's
is the
been
point.
dismantled.
The cruelty is the point. What were you gonna say?
oh, well, that's a phrase I use when I'm praying, about things like this. I mean, that's what you're hoping for and praying for, that some of these attitudes will change, but it doesn't seem like it's happening very fast.
When it's happened, it's faster.
Well, and we may pray for something, but then we turn around and say, thy will be done. So which is it? When we say thy will be done, we assume that, God knows what he's doing. And it may not be healing.
Well,
He's got a plan.
the formation of the universe, science is backing that up, and if he did that. There's just ways that things are done, and it's just, you gotta get over it. There's cruelty out there that's just unreal.
Yeah.
And things our troops did in Vietnam when they go through those searches, and I mean, it was just plain inhuman what our soldiers did, what had to do when they were scared to death. Why do we have to do it? I don't know, just go through and ruin their food sources and, destroy their houses, and we were there to help them. What's this all about? I'd see those kids come back from searches and they were just totally demoralized. Totally. So it's been going on forever now. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's in the plan. It's there.
well, chapter, I mean, verse 12. If we all live this verse, then the world would be a different place. So in everything do to others, what you would have them do to you. But this sums up the law and the prophets, I mean, the golden rule. And my little thing says that the golden rule is in Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. It's a variety of that is in all of those religions. So it's not unique just to our religion. A lot of religions preach this, but not everybody, in fact, most people, I don't think lives this.
I liked, the sentence on page 117 under the do to others, in evangelizing, in being the light of the world and to the world. One does well to show what is right with one's own tradition, not what is wrong with someone else's. One evangelizes by love, not by compulsion.
Yeah, I like the one about how they pull over the person with all these bumper stickers on.
Oh, yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. Say, well, you know what, I was, honked at the old lady in the crossing, signaled with a middle finger. It's kind of saying, yeah.
Thanks for saying that, boy.
Yeah. So, yeah, do unto others, I mean, that sums everything up. We talk about that, that's kind of like the summation of everything. Love God with all your heart and to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's the whole summation of the Bible. But I suppose it's like I said, I wrote down, it's that easier said than done. How do we do unto others? In your life, in your last week, was there something that you could have done unto others different? If you just evaluate your life. So don't go back, a long way, just last week, is there something that you don't think you did that first?
Sure. I think a good question would be, has there ever been a week when you've lived that verse every single day, every single moment? Cause I don't know that any of us could say that we have.
Yeah.
And I think that goes, we sang, we'll know we are Christians by our love this morning, and I've, in the last several years, had a really contentious problem with that, because I feel like it's, it feels like a rallying cry for people that in my mind don't emulate it very well, like, let's pat ourselves on the back for how amazing we are, but when I was singing it today, I was really thinking about it, and I was like, but what if we actually did this? This is more like holding a mirror up to us, showing us what we're not doing. And how amazing would this world be if we just did this? And so it's more like a call to action and I don't know, a way to look at ourselves. And then if we go back to what we just talked about earlier, where it said that some of this stuff is meant to be taught to and expected of the people of God, but not outside of that. But if the people of God did what they were supposed to do and actually carried out the work in the world, would we have a much bigger impact on the world than, the people that we can't change and the people that are evil and whatever? Like, so maybe that's something to pray for. Why aren't we being a better witness? And think about how many Christians there are in this world. We can't change everybody's hearts, but if just the people who are Christians started doing what they're supposed to do, and other religions that have similar belief systems would also band together, I mean, there would be way more of them than there are the people who are the other way.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was in Thailand, which is a Buddhist country, got to know a little bit of the Buddhist culture, and if you're a good, strong Buddhist, you are supposed to do at least one kind act every day to somebody. Could be somebody could be a stranger. And I was blessed by several times people choosing to do their kind act to me. who they didn't know. Oh, there's a stranger, I should be kind to them. It's like, wow. That's a good, and they said, well, you know, we're supposed to do one kind act, at least one every day. And I thought, gee, we should have taught that. You know, and it, because they didn't know me, but they were, they would go out of the way to be kind to me. I saw several instances and I was explained that later, why, you know, said, oh. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, we're Christians and Jesus taught that too, but again, other religions do too. So, you know, that's cool. So what about the false prophets they talk about? The ones that say, you know. Let's see, 119.
Yeah, that first paragraph is kind of like, ooh, sounds pretty familiar.
Yeah, the false you know, they're going around, Lord, Lord, that's, all you need to do is believe in Jesus and you'll be saved.
Yeah.
I think, you know, trying not to get too political, but there are some people in some nationalistic churches that are going around saying, Lord, Lord, but I'm not, so you'll know them by their fruits.
Yeah, the private jets rather than healthcare or constricted form of morality and then their own sexual escapades. I can name a lot of people.
Well,
Do you think those people are gonna be surprised when God said, I never knew you?
I think there's always people who are just evil and know it and are using power to get things done. And then I also think there are people who are quite deluded in the fact that they really think that they're following something that they're supposed to follow. And I think, so I think some of them will be surprised, and I think some of them won't.
Don't care. Yeah.
in our family, we have some primitive Baptists, and they frequently preach to us. And Bobby and I have just taken the opinion that we just nod our head because they believe in those leaders so adamantly, like they were Jesus themselves, you know? And it's sad, but it happens.
So, how can those leaders, he says you'll know them by their fruits. How can the people that are following leaders like that recognize that that's?
But they wanna believe them, they force their mind. My brother-in-law Jimmy, we talk, and he is just, you know, they're just so right and we're so wrong, and I don't know how to answer it, you know, but they're just, I don't know, that's what actually scares me from really getting serious with a church years ago, cause some of them are just so. They're a false prophet, they really are, what they wanna do. I'm down in Texas, when we were down there, we just watched it come through and open up their tent and preach and all, you know, throw away your crutches and come to Christ, come forward, come on down, and I'll touch you and bless you, and they're just, now tell me that isn't a false prophet, I'm gonna touch you and heal you, you know? I just didn't understand it, and we got down there, we see it in the newspaper, and you know, if you come out here to this revival in this field, you'll be saved. Jesus will save you. For the Lord, I don't know, I never went to one. But
I've got underlining and arrows. Telling you 5 arrows, mostly underlined lines along on 120 and 121 about discernment, like how to know. Discernment should not, or should be based not by these prophets' theology, not by politics, and not by what church they attend. Discernment is based on what they do. The point applies to individuals and it applies to churches as well. When the service becomes a show designed to entertain rather than to comfort and encourage, I've been to somewhere like that. When people attend more because of cultural pressure than need for community, when genuine curiosity about the Bible is closed down rather than encouraged, false prophets are lurking. Leave the walking on water to Jesus. Instead, feed the hungry. Leave the signs and wonders to the prophets of Israel and John the Baptist. Instead, clothe the naked. Leave the deeds of power, the mighty works to God. Instead, welcome the stranger. To do that is miracle enough.
Mhm.
I'm always comforted by the fruits of the spirit.
Mhm.
Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control.
Mhm.
And to me, that's something that any of us, we'd never get there, but we can all strive for that. And that's another way of, I think, discerning,
Mhm.
really discerning the false prophet, is that are those things there? And yeah, I always like the fact that it's not, when you hear those things, you don't necessarily think of a preacher and a sermon, you think of the person sitting in the pew that's living that. Nothing against pastors, but what I'm saying is, it's not about preaching.
False prophets, yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's both.
Well, it is, I'm
Yeah,
not saying
yeah.
that pastors don't do that, I don't
No,
mean that at
no,
all.
I know what
I'm
you're
just
saying, yeah.
saying that one doesn't have to be up in front doing that.
Right, right.
That it's something that
Mhm.
it shows humility
Yeah,
Mhm.
and
it says that, good food is not always obvious.
Mhm.
Um,
I think the problem is in a lot of those settings, bad fruit is being taught as good fruit.
Yeah.
It's making people who are in those systems don't understand that what they're getting is a bad product. And I can say that having been in those circles where you were taught that there's a lot of things that are not in that list of things that are the things that you're building, you're going towards to be a righteous person and to have yourself right before God and all these things. And when I have had a chance to step away from that and I look back at that, I look at how many of those things were actually really harmful.
Mhm.
But at the time didn't know that, and you're shamed into upholding those things, or else you're not towing the line.
yeah,
And so I think in some ways, for the people underneath that power, the only way to get out of it or to have a recognition of it is to somehow be exposed to something that helps them see what good fruit really is.
Hmm.
And what bad fruit really is, and have discernment about that.
Mhm.
I mean, the leaders are gonna get, like, talks about, getting hung by millstones, right, and drowning themselves, so they're gonna get their just desserts no matter what. But it's the people that are harmed by it, that's.
Mhm. Yeah. And there's a lot of people, there's a lot of responsibility for pastors, because you're leading people. Because a lot of people are being led astray. And like you said, the leaders will get their just desserts, but what about those people that are led astray?
Well, Jesus goes after the sheep. It doesn't say when he stops going after the sheep. So maybe unfortunately it's after they die, he goes after them, I don't know, but he keeps going after them.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So this book is called the Sermon on the Mount, A Beginner's Guide to the Kingdom of Heaven. So what, and then the last thing here it says, on the very last 128, it says, if you let the sermon be your guide, you will not only have one foot in the kingdom of heaven, but also be able to experience the kingdom in your life and in your heart.
Hey, this is a Jewish woman saying this too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
I feel a lot stronger towards Jewish people after reading this book and watching some videos on what it is to be a Jew. A lot more empathy.
So, what does it mean, the kingdom of heaven? Does it mean heaven? But she's talking about it means it here on earth.
Mhm.
And beginner's guide, how does the Sermon on the Mount, with all the things that we've learned in this last few weeks, you know, the chapter is called Living into the Kingdom.
Mhm.
So I think she's talking about some of this on earth, not just
Sure.
dying and going to heaven. How can we have kingdom of heaven?
What we do now, we're helping the kingdom to be on earth, and what we do now will matter. It does matter. I mean, it's not the works righteousness thing, but I mean, we're supposed to, Jesus tells us to live this out. It's not just the, oh, Lord, Lord, I'm saved and now I can flip people off and do all this, whatever well, I mean, seriously, it was in there, yeah. But I mean, you're supposed to live this out, and if we're living it out, it does matter. So,
The question is, for me, is that all that is involved in being a child of God? Is it only living it out? I mean, she says here, the deep roots, the firm foundation derived from knowing the scriptural teaching and acting on them. Is that it? Is that the only thing?
No, I don't agree with everything that she says, and you obviously don't either.
Yeah, I struggle with some of the things she's saying. I mean, what she's saying is right. You've got to act it. But is that the only thing?
No.
So what else is there?
Well, you said the word a child of God, and I've not heard that before, but, it comes back to the state of grace that you're being a good person here on earth, to me,
Is it
that's the
simply
most,
being a good person?
Jesus didn't talk about heaven, but just knowing what you should do, knowing the best way to do it, and honestly trying to do it. Wouldn't that make you a child of God?
I don't think,
I don't know.
I don't,
That's interesting, cause you know a lot more about this than I do.
I don't think that's all there is to being a child of God.
They got some.
He's getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So Stan, are you also alluding to the fact that like us being in relationship with God and having that peace is a piece that is also, is that what you're trying to get at as well? Like not just the practical, like us out, but also the us up,
Yeah,
Mhm.
I would say that, yes.
But it's also commanded, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we, by building that connection with God, that gives us the spirit, which then equips us to go out as well, right?
Mm.
So if you don't have a connection to know how to do and what to do,
Mhm.
so it's kind of like a tree trying to function without its roots.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And so,
There has to be
so is
more
there a
than
piece
simply
to that?
doing.
Mhm. Sure,
where does your
yeah.
source come from?
Yeah,
That's your
and
inspiration.
that's what I'm getting at. And I don't, she doesn't ever go there. I'm sorry that she doesn't. She never goes to what does it really mean to be a child of God?
I'll get the
And
worst.
part of that being is the roots that go down to Christ Jesus, what he has done for us.
It's not, yeah. It's not my words.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, and in some places, like, as much as we wanna do as much good in the world as we can, we still live in a fallen world.
yeah,
Mhm.
But the miraculous thing about our relationship with God and the Holy Spirit being that connecting is we are being refined and made new and turned into something that the world can't be
yeah.
in some
I
ways.
agree there.
And it's, and so, I mean, how amazing is that? But you're right, that pipeline, that connection also needs to be there. I think people get into one of two ends sometimes. They either get into the, I only need to make my relationship with God as good as possible because the world is going to hell, so who cares? And then you've got the people who are, we have to make everything on this earth as perfect as possible, which will never actually happen. And really, like you said, there's a tension or a point somewhere in there in the middle that, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that we have to do. I don't debate that question. But what is the source of our doing? Where does it come from?
Yeah, what inspires us
What inspires us?
to do.
And more than inspires us, who is the one who is doing it?
Yeah,
Right, cause as I pointed out, there's good people in all cultures and all religions.
Mhm.
yeah.
I mean, how is a good Buddhist different than a good Christian?
That,
I don't know.
Yeah, you know, it's like, I think it's what you were saying, because, I don't wanna be Buddhist. I wanna be Christian, that's why I'm here, and I believe, you know, I believe in Christ and I, you know, accept it in my heart, but. I recognize that are good people in other religions, you know, and. But I like here, she goes, the Beatitudes tell us that we, each of us individually, are not the center of the world. Nor do we need to be. We are not its center, we are its light and its salt. So, I mean, I do like, you know, the Beatitudes. Blessed are the meek. Because some. Especially world leaders are, it's all about them, and it's very. Disconcerting.
And not just world leaders, we can all be very self-centered.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I mean, we really see it when it's out in front of us. In a world leader, but we all have that issue usually.
Yeah, some people just, unfortunately, I mean, we can all do it at certain times, but some people haven't really tried to evolve past the 2-year-old mentality of, you know, if it's mine, it's mine. If I think it's mine, it's mine. If it's ever been mine, it's mine, you know, I mean, that's the 2-year-old. It's all about me.
Yeah, and it's easy to get that way, I remember several years ago, I was. Leading a vacation Bible school. And at the same time, my mom had a medical crisis and I had to go down, literally, like about 10 days before the vacation Bible school was supposed to start. I had to go down to California. It was like, but nobody else could run this vacation Bible school, it's all about me. You know, and so, I called it Amy and a couple other people, and they stepped up, took over. You know, it's like, and then I realized it's not all about me. You know, other people can do this job. I was thinking I had to do it all. Nope, no, you don't. You really don't. There's other people that are out there ready right to step right in. And you know, here I was trying to do a religious thing, but you know, but I realized that I was thinking that I and only I could do this when I was so wrong. I was so wrong, and it taught me a lesson, you know, and so I actually came back like 2 days before vacation Bible school started. Randy said, "Oh, put you back. Here's what I've done. Here, take over." It's like, oh my gosh, you are so wonderful. But you know, so I think you're right. It's not just for leaders. Even if I was thinking I was doing a good thing, I was like trying to do too much, trying to take over. And I think it's easy to realize that we are not the center. We are the light.
Even if we retire, oh, you know, who's gonna take my place type thing, it's like a lot of people.
Yeah. Will the company ever be the same? Will they, you know, like whatever, and it's like, yeah. Yeah, it'll be.
Yeah. So, okay, how are we supposed to have, kingdom of heaven on earth?
We gonna repeat this book next year?
Get more out of it.
We've got other books in line.
Yeah,
Well, the Sermon on the Mount is, in my book, is really big,
Yeah,
really big. Knowing what went on there, you know. gives you pretty good guidance. But Jesus was teaching the disciples. Would it be something to sit with Jesus for a while and have him say it in his own words, huh? Cause we're just from other people, what they heard,
Yeah,
just a half hour with Jesus would be something.
Yeah, they also talk about the wise and the foolish builders. The wise man built his house upon the rock,
mhm.
and foolish man built his house upon a sand. Again, there's another song about that. And so, yeah, we're all humming that song. And then the rain came and the winds blew. We were talking about the wind in the sermon today. And the wind can either empower us or it can blow us down because our foundation isn't good. So I guess, and that's the last part of his Sermon on the Mount, as he talks about the wise and the foolish builders. So I mean, I guess that's his parting message, is that we need to be grounded with everything that he had said prior to that. That we need to build a root and be grounded and not let, as we're going away, that he says, don't let the wind and the rain blow away what you just heard. We need to build it on the foundation. Because that's the last part, that's exactly the last part. It says, when Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teachings, because he was taught as one who had authority and not as a teacher of the law.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, it certainly was a book that generated a lot of discussion,
Mhm.
which I think it's been good.
Yeah,
Yeah. It was like you were saying, it's nice to have the Jewish perspective. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I'm assuming she's a Jewish Christian? Yeah.
No, that was just Jewish,
Oh.
Jewish scholar.
although recognizing, I mean, it's interesting because she does say something, only the one who does the will of my Father in heaven, says Jesus, will enter. That will is the Torah, she says, but yeah, she definitely knows her stuff.
So you've got that book on the wall.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot. I have notes.
I use highlighter.
Yeah,
My pages are wrinkled.
yeah.
Well, I guess that, how about if I close in prayer?
That's
So what's our first class in the summer? We're doing every other
the
week.
29th.
Yeah, I'd have to get that.
So
I just wrote it in my deacon email yesterday, and I can't remember.
I think that-
today is the 8th, it'll be the 29th.
That's
Yeah.
the 29th.
Yeah, I think it is, you're right, because it's gotta be 3 weeks from today, because
Just trying to remember.
I'm working in.
So every other week, starting 3 weeks from now, we're gonna have just a little video series and discussion around those kind of roots of Presbyterian.
Yeah, it's what it means to be Presbyterian, and they're 11 to 13 minute video that you watch first, and then you can they have things to study about it.
I think the first one's on grace, isn't it?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, and then so you print it out, and there's all sorts of
A people of
questions
grace.
that they give you questions to talk about it. You don't have to do any study ahead of time. You just come and listen, and then somebody will have these sentences to ask you. Okay, here's some questions about this video. What do you think about what he just said here? And stuff like that. So it's nice. You don't have to have any prep time. And even the leader actually doesn't have too much prep time. So it'll be good. But at the same time, same place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Matt gave me a book to read, has a lot of Presbyterian history, and it's how the Scots changed the world, and it's really interesting.
Right, and so these are more of what Presbyterians believe, not Presbyterians' history, I don't believe.
Yeah.
But part of it was we all could kind of get a grounding of what it means to be Presbyterian.
Well, the chapter I'm currently in is during the Revolutionary War.
Mm.
20 of the 58 signers of the Declaration of Independence for Presbyterians. Presbyterians had a large impact from
Mhm.
philosophers and stuff in Scotland of what's in our constitution. So I'm kind of proud of that this group and they definitely come from.
Everything orderly in this place.
Mhm.
Just what Presbyterians do, yeah. All right. Dear Lord, we thank you for this study. We thank you for these people around this table and the insights that everyone brings to this. And I thank you and blessed by each and every person here. Always go out throughout this day in Jesus' name.
And thank you to all of you. Sure.
3 weeks from today.